Hi guys, I hope you had the opportunity to watch the two YouTube videos that further explains why these five methods could prove and will prove that two triangles are congruent. What we did not discuss was angle, angle, angle. The second video that you should have watched would explain to you why ASS or SSA could not and would not prove triangle congruence, all right? But we didn't talk about this one. So let's talk about it. So if all angles are congruent, does that necessarily prove that the triangles themselves are congruent? Okay? So let's look at the example that we're given. We have two equilateral triangles. In any and every single equilateral triangle, all three sides angles are 60 degrees in angle measure. Okay, so all three are 60 degrees in angle measure. Doesn't matter how big or small the triangle is, and it also doesn't matter what the lengths of the sides are. Okay, so what I illustrated here was we can have this teeny tiny equilateral triangles where the sides are all 5 units in length. The sides are all 5 units in length. The angles are all 60 degrees in angle measure. But look at this larger triangle. All of the angle measures are 60 degrees, right? So all of these are 60 degrees. So all the angles are congruent. But if I took this, I'm going to do my tracing paper thing again. If I took this little triangle, and I don't even have to do this, but I'm just trying to make a point. If I took this little triangle, right, and I superimposed it over this, look, it doesn't sit perfectly on top of this triangle. They're not congruent. Why? Because although all three angles are the same measure, the sides are not. So you have the smaller one, and then you have this larger one where the sides are 8 units in length. And if these sides are 8 units in length and these sides are 5 units in length, of course they're not going to sit perfectly over each other because the sides are going to be smaller in this case, and as we proved with that tracing paper. So that's why angle, angle, angle does not work to prove congruence. When we get to similarity, it's a whole nother story, okay? But in the case of congruence, they do not prove that two triangles are congruent, all right? That's really important. So never will this be used, or ASS or SSA, to prove that triangles are congruent to each other. Let's go ahead and do the try it out, okay? So here we're asked to state whether the triangles are congruent and how. How do we know? So are they? And if so, how? Okay, so let's look at triangles FED and CBA. Okay, so if I look at how these are situated, we have these two corresponding angles are congruent, and then we know that these two sides are corresponding as well, all right? So we have a side, an angle, and a side. Notice that this angle is smack dab between two sets of congruent sides. Yes, these are congruent, and they are congruent through the side, angle, side congruence postulate. Okay, what about these two triangles? Well, I noticed that, and I'm going to call it, if you look at the triangles, and it's, I would call this TNO, and I'm going to call this ABT, okay? And yes, these are congruent through the side, side, side congruence postulate. Side, side, side congruence postulate, okay? So these, both of these triangles are congruent. Now look at number 3. There's something funky here. We have these two triangles, right? Triangle 1, triangle 2, but they share a side. This right here, when you have two triangles that share a side, it's called the reflexive property. called the reflexive property, okay? And that's really sloppy. We're going to talk more about the reflexive property, especially as we go into writing proofs. Okay, that's going to come up a lot. That's going to be a property that you use a lot of. Now, if we separated these two triangles, right, this side would be the same length in both because they share the side, and of course it's going to be congruent. So we have this side that they share. So let's look at it. We have an angle, we have a side, and we have a side. An angle, a side, and a side. So we have this property here. ASS doesn't work, so nope. ASS. So these two triangles are not congruent. And I can actually see that. We can actually see that they're not congruent. Or we can't prove that they're congruent. We can't prove it just by their angle and then two of the consecutive sides being congruent. It wouldn't work. All right. So the fourth one, hopefully you tried all of these on your own, and this is kind of just a way for you to check in and see if they're correct. The fourth one is we have right angle. And so, of course, we have the reflexive property again. This is a shared hypotenuse, right? So this is the hypotenuse. And we know that HL, hypotenuse leg, is one way to prove that triangles are congruent. So we have a hypotenuse, and if it's a shared side by the reflexive property, by that token, they are definitely, like this side is definitely congruent, right? And then there's a leg that's congruent. So this is yes by HL, okay? You're going to go on to the classwork packet. If you have any questions, please ask me. Thanks. Bye.